The air, water, earth, and sun awes us. The four awesome forces of nature can provide 1,000 times more energy than we need. You are also awesome. You and me and all Earthkind are the fifth element. We are literally changing the world. Technology is now harnessing nature's awesome power for electricity, heat, and transportation. And the best news is that the clean energy transition can save us money and create a more prosperous, just, beautiful, and sustainable civilization today. Welcome. Okay, great. Well, welcome to the Awesome Earthkind podcast. If you would, please let folks know who you are, where do you live, and what kind of work do you do?
Ron, thanks for having me on the show. My name is John Belizaire, and I am the CEO of Soluna Computing. We are helping to increase the penetration of renewable energy in the world using computing as a catalyst. I am hailing from New York City, in Tribeca, actually, working from home as many of the world is right now. And I'm excited about the show. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you, John. Thanks so much. We like to help frame things with, we call it a quantum quote. Do you have an inspirational quote that you care to share, sir?
Well, having been an entrepreneur for 20 years, it's all about ideas for me. And there's a quote from Edward de Bono. He is the father of lateral thinking. And he's got a quote about ideas. And the quote goes like this. It says, "An idea that is developed and put into action is more important than an idea that exists only as an idea."
How true, right? We all have
great
exactly
ideas.
We got to put them into action and have them be have any sort of impact. So
yeah,
wonderful.
Otherwise they just sort of, bouncing around in your brain, and nobody will ever, know they exist to some extent, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So wonderful. All right. I'd like to start with why. Why do you focus on sustainable computing, John? What's the motivation behind you there?
The motivation. Well, to some extent, it's an idea that came out of trying to solve a really hard problem that we had for ourselves. About 4 years ago, the company started out as a renewable energy development company. We were building a wind farm in the kite surfing capital of the world. Most people don't know, but in the southern part of Morocco, Northern Africa, there is a part of the country where if you go to the airport and you look around the airport, what you'll see are a combination of renewable energy people. You might see some agribusiness folks, and the rest of the gang will be some of the best kite surfers in the world.
Wow.
And the reason is because, and it's a beautiful part of the world too. It's in the desert there, amazing shores, but the wind is traveling at, close to 20, 30 miles an hour.
Wow.
And so you're talking about incredible speeds, and that makes it an amazing place for developing wind-based energy. So renewable energy, we had a big wind farm there. It sits on a development site that's about twice the size of Manhattan. And as I said, it's, 20 meters per second. So it's very, very fast wind. And the problem that we had is we had this great wind development resource, but there was no grid there. And how do you monetize a wind asset when you have no place to send the power? And so the idea we had was, what if we built a off-grid implementation where we had a wind farm and a data center that would use that energy, convert it to a form of computing, and then that would monetize the power. And then when the grid arrived, we could just inject that power into the grid, and suddenly we'd participate in the renewable energy market there. Well, we continued to develop the site over the next 4 years, getting all the permits and so forth. And as we were doing that, the grid did make its way down there. The country was focused on this very big expansion and conversion of the mixture of their energy from primarily importing their power, fossil fuels, based and thermal to becoming an energy exporter using their rich resources in hydro, solar, and wind, and making over 51% of their power coming from renewables. So big initiative. We would, be able to participate in that. So that grid made its way down to that area. Plus, they wanted to develop that area as to a big tourist part of the country. And what we realized is, hey, now we have a different problem. We're going to be able to send power to the grid, but we have so much power that the grid won't be able to take all of the power. So now the computing is really a solution to curtailment or wasted energy. And so we can convert that wasted energy to computing resources. And that's when we started thinking, hey, is this a problem only we have? And we started looking at the computing space, the data center space, and it is fast growing. It is probably one of the largest energy users in the world. And what most people don't know is, to some extent, it needs to use so much energy that it actually keeps fossil fuels on the grid. And then you look at renewable energy development. You've probably heard in the past year, Ron, that there's probably about $700 billion in 2020, $750 billion this past year, and that number is going to grow even more with some of these new infrastructure initiatives. So there's a lot of renewable energy that's being built, but what most people don't realize is up to about a third of that power, that green energy, never actually makes it to the grid. And that's because the grid here in the US and just about everywhere suffers from an architecture problem. It was originally designed to synchronize the production of the power to the consumption of the power, right? So you have plants that are on 24/7. They're built to size exactly to the demand that the grid expects to get pulled off by users and so forth. But as you start to change those power plants and replace them with green energy, with intermittent resources that are really controlled by Mother Nature, that synchronization no longer exists. So sometimes you're going to have the wind blowing and no one's available to really use that power because they're all asleep or or some other reason. And so you have lots of power that these energy companies are producing but unable to monetize. And so our idea was, hey, what if we took our solution that we just solved for ourselves and take it around the world and basically build purpose-built data centers that are scalable, modular. They sit right at the power plant. And when that power plant has extra energy, we absorb that energy, convert it to global computing for specific types of applications that most people don't realize are happening in the background. There's always an AI machine running or a machine learning machine running out there at some point. I just jumped on my Peloton this morning, and I know that thing is collecting a lot of information on me and crunching it. And then the next time I get on, it's going to give me a better experience. Well, those applications can run in data centers like we've designed because those applications can be paused. And so that's what we're doing at Soluna. We're building an entire network of these modular, flexible data centers so we can bring a sort of flexible load, a flexible fabric to the grid that it doesn't have right now. And that's what we're excited about over here at Soluna.
Fascinating. So yeah, I mean, I've heard with cryptocurrency, that's massive computer power.
Exactly.
Right. And so
yeah,
your solution
that's right.
actually helps with that too, right?
That's right. So cryptocurrency, there are two narratives out there. One is that, oh my God, this thing is has amazing potential to unlock the freedom for lots of people all around the country, all around the world. And at the same time, it has this really, really bad side effect, and that's that it uses a lot of energy, right?
So
the other
I'm sorry.
Perspective, Ron, the other perspective is, which is a more uplifting and one that we believe in, is that because you're creating this new technology that's really about, a digital asset, digital gold, if you will, it needs to be secured. And the purpose of the energy use is really to provide a deterrent to attacking the network, because you need to expend so much energy to change the blockchain and all of those transactions that you're better off protecting it than attacking it. And that's why that energy use is really a feature, not a bug. And so what we do at Soluna is we take that feature, if you will, and we turn it into a feature for the grid by using the fact that that type of computing, that cryptocurrency mining, if you will, or security, can absorb and be paused and expand. We can use it to enhance the flexibility, modulate the frequency of the grid, and improve the experience as you add more green power. And as a result, you can put more green power on the grid.
Cool. So basically, it optimizes the amount of intermediate renewables without having to do storage. This acts as an alternative to storage by just using that excess, and also acts as an alternative to curtailment, which, as you said, if there's too much energy on the grid, you can't use it, so people shut stuff down, which is ridiculous. So
Exactly.
yeah, great, awesome.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So you're building these data centers near large renewable energy power plants all over the globe, huh?
We do, yeah. We follow large infrastructure companies that are building lots of these around the world, and we go to sectors where there's lots of call it overbuild of renewables, if you will. There's so much, when you have lots of capital, billions of dollars to put to work, what you have is what I like to call the McDonald's and Burger King effect, right? They're all competing for the best possible location, and they end up in like across the street from each other, right? And so you always wonder, like, why is there a Burger King and a McDonald's literally like 2 blocks from each other? And because they optimize to the same target market and everything. Renewable energy is very similar, right? You're going to follow where the best resources are. If you want wind, you're going to go to southern Morocco, right? You're going to go to some parts of sub-Saharan Africa. If you're going to go to Texas, and so you have lots of really big projects competing to get on the grid. And so as a result, once they're connected, there's a lot of congestion in parts of the grid. And so we go to those locations, we work with the power partners, and we place our facilities there, integrate with their power plants, and we now give them this experience that they want to have with the battery. But batteries are challenged to sort of scale at the levels that computing is ready to scale at today.
Wow, fascinating. Wonderful. So what do you see as kind of the forces that are driving all sustainable computing? Is it that there's excess? I mean, you mentioned a couple of them, I guess, but if you would cop into it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. The first is that the world since the pandemic has really joined together, got into the front and the back seat of a Tesla and are driving at high speed toward a renewable energy transition. Right, we're all there. We're tapped in. And maybe we're driving or we got the autopilot turned on the thing, but it's going in a direction. It's sort of unstoppable at this point. And that has really changed the psyche of just about every single leader in just about every business, right? It's changed the folks that are in the traditional fossil fuel space. Like, we have to transform. Like, we've got to get out of this business and really transform the work that we're doing. If you look at the heads of the largest financial services companies in the world, well, we have to look at the green footprint and sustainability of our computing fabric. How does that? What's our ESG strategy, and how's that going to fit into sort of where the world is going? You have the fact that the people who are creating these pausable applications, these batch-oriented applications, they're all some of the best data science minds in the world. They take large corpuses of data and they turn them into insights that can be used to enhance user experiences, create new user applications, and so forth. And you know what they're doing? They're now in virtual coffee shops, if you will, and they're talking about whether what they're doing is destroying the planet. I mean, it's exciting what they're doing, but are we destroying the planet because now we're creating these massive data centers that are crunching on data that need to be on 24/7 and consuming lots of power, and we're funding all of this, right? And we've talked to a lot of these data scientists over the last year or so to really understand their requirements and how they would be able to use our data centers and what features and functions they would need. And so I think that, the short answer is, Ron, there is just a significant change in perspective about the importance of sustainability on a global basis. Just about everyone is talking about it. If you had an AI machine listen to all of the earnings reports for some of the largest public companies, you'll probably hear sustainability and ESG mentioned 3 or 4 times in every one of those presentations, and that probably represents about 75 to 85% of those talks. And so I think that's the big shift, is that people are saying, we have a climate change problem, and if we don't do something drastically different, bring some new ideas, going back to my early quote there, and put those ideas into action, we're in big trouble.
Wow. So how do you see this future evolving for sustainable computing, and what do you see as kind of the outcomes?
Well, I think you're going to see a number of shifts. I think the first one is traditional data centers, the ones that are focused on what I call, if you look at applications, there are 2 types. There's one type, which is real-time applications, right? These are the mission critical. They're running your business on a daily basis. So, Amazon's run as e-commerce platform, the ERP systems that run the big manufacturing companies. Those applications will continue to live inside of those data centers. And so the key now is to make sure that when those applications are running, they're sourcing their power from green, sustainable sources, not the carbon credit, shell game. I'm talking about really the electrons coming into the building are coming from green sources to power those applications. I think the second shift you're going to see is the definition of data center will change, where you'll have, a highly redundant, replicated data center that probably eliminates those diesel backup machines and has, some advanced Tesla batteries or something like that back there. And then you're going to have these modular, flexible, scalable data centers that are really light footprint, much less redundant. They're actually built to be on less than 24/7, and they will be purpose built for these types of non-real-time or batchable applications. So you'll see a bifurcation, I think, in terms of what data centers look like. And so this concept of what the market is calling circular computing will become a standard practice, if you will. If you're not building a sustainable data center, then what exactly are you doing, I think? And I think you're going to see that shift take place all around the world. Those are the first 2 things. The third thing is not so apparent, but I think it's going to become apparent over time. We take for granted the power of power, like energy that comes into and powers our businesses, because it's just there when you plug the, you plug your toaster in, you plug your TV in, it just works.
It's amazing.
And especially here in developed countries, it's beautiful,
Yeah,
but the more you add green energy, the more there's potential for that to really become more challenging to deliver. And so the concept of the grid infrastructure will change, and what's inside of that infrastructure is going to change, right? It was a very simple design before. You had these dispatchable power plants you can turn on, they fire up, literally, and deliver energy. Now you have an entirely diverse set of infrastructure elements. You're now going to have batteries. You're going to have more advanced transmission systems, AI-powered intelligence about where to shift and send the power. You're going to have these really super advanced demand response platforms where we can shut off certain elements of the grid if we need to, or power up certain elements of the grid if we need to. And we also think that computing will actually become part of the grid fabric. It won't just be a customer of the power, right? Like right now, Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're really customers, right? They're big customers on the grid. But over time, what you're going to have with these new types of data centers, you're actually going to have data centers actually being built by the grid itself and placing it into the fabric with those power plants on the grid itself to provide this sort of, absorption or flexibility on demand aspect. And I think you'll see law changes that support that. I really, was hoping that in the infrastructure bill, people were a little more expansive in their view about how to incorporate more green, right? People just think, let's just put batteries. Well, batteries are a solution, but they're not the only solution. And I think you're going to have a lot more diversity. And so I think the grid looks very different in the next decade or so, because it's going to be a global fabric that's going to really change things. The other thing that excites me, Ron, is taking this innovation or change to the grid to developing countries. We spent a lot of time in Africa with our project, and one thing I realized, and this is what sort of gets me up in the morning, is that there are a lot of countries on the continent that have incredible resources for generating energy. There's this one report I was looking at that that basically described the fact that the African renewable energy potential, right? If you look at where energy is being developed around the world, in Africa, it's highly untapped, right? African states probably have about 5 gigawatts of solar PV installed, which is about 1% of the world's total, solar PV, but they have some of the best solar resources, right? If you look at the continent, it has almost an unlimited potential of solar capacity, I think about 10 terawatts, and lots of hydro, 350 gigawatts, wind, 110 gigawatts, right? And I think so the big challenge is, how do we bring investment capital and infrastructure development companies to that space? Because if they could reach the levels, 10x where they are today, let's say, it would put the continent at the forefront of the renewable energy business globally. And it would also drive a lot of its sustainable development and economic development. Bill Gates, in his book, How Do We Avoid Climate Change, he talks about the fact that, with his work, he would fly over the continent, and he always remarked on how it was just dark. When you fly over the US, you see like these glimmering cities, over there, it's just dark. And so there's billions of people who have energy poverty. And it's because there isn't a way to attract capital. But if you had a way to build a power plant, back to that idea, build a power plant, put a data center there that monetizes it. Part of the power goes to the grid. And then as the economy grows and can support the energy, you can deliver more power. And as you have more power, the economic development can grow from there. That's pretty exciting. And by using this innovation, we can essentially drive more renewable energy development all around the globe.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of different concepts. One is the idea of distributed energy resources versus the centralized power piece. We grew up in this country with a centralized grid where we've got, as you said, central power plants. They generate energy, they dump it into the grid as we all need it, and it comes to our businesses, homes, workplaces, etc. But now it's becoming much more distributed. You have much more both solar and wind and other sort of distributed generation sources, and then you have the ability to as you're doing with sustainable computing, is to raise or lower the amount of demand. So to manage the demand, and things like just shutting off a hot water tank for a couple of hours during peak demand periods. If you have an electric hot water tank, who needs it on for that period of time? So all sorts of demand response types of things. And then, the interesting thing is, you keep moving out, and as energy keeps getting more and more decentralized, and individuals and everyone has the ability to generate with smaller power systems, solar on your roof of your home or whatever. And then you have your electric vehicles, which now are both consumers of energy, but can also discharge into the grid. Now you got this two-way, and more need for computer power to be able to manage that. And definitely an evolving grid, but it opens up just an entire new world. You're absolutely right. It's amazing. So, and then there's the third world, the developing world, where they they leapfrogged over phones from landlines to cell phones, and they could do the same thing now with clean energy, which is going to be really fascinating.
That's right. And that's what's exciting here. It's It's fascinating to see. Ron, I'm not a power guy. I'm actually a software guy. I came into the industry about 4 years ago, and I am just fascinated by how big it is and how small it is at the same time. It's amazing how much this industry plays a role in the global economy, in science, in just about everything. And most people, again, take it for granted as sort of this quiet industry in the background, this quiet giant. But it's a very, very small, tight knit, incredibly bright community that is now attracting crazy guys like me and other interesting people to the industry to bring all of this innovation. So it's getting bigger quickly and more diverse, and that's pretty exciting too, just to watch.
Yeah, and needs to happen, right? So for all the
Yeah.
reasons we know. So absolutely.
Exactly.
So John, so what kind of lessons, what challenges have you encountered? What lessons have you learned, and what are you doing differently now than when you first started?
Oh yeah. Oh, so many. I actually relish the learnings that come from entrepreneurship and all of the pain that's associated with that. I think pain is information, and that information helps you to become a better leader. And in the last 4 years, I've learned a lot. I learned the importance of educating a community around innovation. 4 years ago, we were in Morocco talking about blockchain and Bitcoin, and I saw heads go. When you saw the eyes roll back, I don't know how many times I did my magic machine presentation. This is this skit that I do to kind of explain, what blockchain is and how it works. Fascinating. Minds were blown away. Education here in developed energy markets about how to build an entire new infrastructure and financial and trading structure for a behind the meter construct, where you put a data center and integrate it to a wind farm, and why that's good for the grid and good for the local market and so forth. So I find that it's so important to be able to express a new innovation that may be very complex in very simple terms, so that people can join you and become a partner with you in the process. So that's been a learning for me as well. The other thing I learned was how complicated, and I'm talking about super complicated and simple, project finance is. Oh my God. I mean, I've it's been a masterclass, let's put it that way, in the last 4 years, understanding how energy is built, all the different players, tax equity and production tax credits, and equity and debt, and the mixture, and how all of that has to come together and work beautifully together in a very tight and very, very low risk construct. And how adding, something like a, batchable computing framework to something like that, and making sure that entire architecture stays sound is challenging, And so there's been lots of learning and some innovation, I would say, on our part in figuring some of that stuff out. And I think the other learning I'll share is how to build a successfully productive and distributed team during the pandemic. People, we had to shift from a company that was flying back and forth to to the African continent and all around the country and talking to different folks, to trying to speak to large renewable energy administrations and ISOs over the phone and explaining really complex things to them, and then building a team that can do that on a continuous basis. We're growing a lot here, and it's clear we're going to be a distributed company. So really trying to understand how to create a high functioning, collaborative organization that has a magnetic culture is a challenge in this new environment that we're in. I don't see us building a very large physical office for a long time. I think we'll have a distributed team for a long time, and it has to feel like we have a physical office, and that's a very interesting problem to solve for.
Yeah, definitely. And if you figure it out, let the rest of us know, would you?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're all struggling with the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You talk,
We'll,
you
we'll,
talk
we'll,
to
de- we'll definitely get it out there and write it up, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just, in this COVID world, it's, everything's changed, and, the great part is about the technology is
Yeah,
here, right? So,
that's
I
right.
mean, and not that long ago, I would never have done a video call interview kind of thing, just
Right.
because I didn't know the technology, it wasn't ready, it wasn't there. And now it's
That's right.
just become embedded in all that we do, right? So, yeah, it's
It is.
amazing.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it
pretty
is
cool.
amazing.
Awesome.
It is amazing indeed.
So take one thing that you've done with your field and share, if you would, one unique tip, tool, or a tactic that you think most people need to know, but probably don't.
Hmm.
Hmm.
As an entrepreneur, you mean, or as a,
However you want
uh,
to look at it, John.
however I want to look at it?
Yeah. Something that you think that most people really should know, but they probably don't.
Well, I think that most people, earlier I was talking about the fact that most people want more green power, but they don't understand the challenges with getting more green power. I don't think people understand the challenges with renewables and the fact that as I was saying earlier, the grid has this very, very structured way in which to build out that infrastructure, and at the heart of it is this concept of dispatchability. I can control when power comes on, when demand comes off, etc. And here Mother Nature is deciding dispatchability, to some extent, and most people don't know that, and that creates this entire wasted energy issue. To put it in perspective, there is close to about 230 plus terawatt hours of energy. And what does that mean? Think about 8 million barrels of oil that are basically wasted, that could have been converted into some form of energy, or $7 billion of revenue that a power plant companies, around the world are losing. And this is on an annual basis every single year. It just gets, burned into thin air. And so this is a big problem. And the interesting thing is that the solution to that problem exists today. The innovation that you need to solve that problem is what I like to call combinatorial innovation. It's combining existing things to create something new to solve a really hard problem. And that, I think, has been the real shift in innovation. You don't have to solve really, problem solutions aren't really about sort of net new creation of something new. It's really about thinking about the problem differently, right? You've got the renewable energy industry needs more flexibility. The computing industry needs more green power. The renewable energy industry needs more demand. The computing industry needs more green power. You put those two things together and they start to become one sentence. And that's what we've discovered. Here. The other thing I've learned, Ron, is the power of storytelling. Most people don't know how powerful that is. Most people aren't very good at storytelling, but stories are at the heart of how you get action. How you turn ideas into execution. You have to get people to buy into a vision of the future that they can all believe, and then they can see a path to creating that vision of the future. Here at Soluna, we're trying to have renewable energy become the world's superpower, essentially. And we're using computing, something that exists today, to make that happen. And that's the vision of the future that we believe in.
Awesome. Yeah, without on the global climate situation, first you have to have hope. If you have no hope that we can solve it, then we're doomed. And then
Yes.
after hope, then you have to have a vision, and then you have to execute. So you're absolutely
Exactly.
right. It takes
That's
all
right.
those components. All right. Well, here's a little story for us, for you to tell us, if you would, John. In most of our entrepreneurial careers, there's been a particular worst moment where things just looked really bleak and dark, and you hit this kind of bottom, and then something needed to shift, and something shifted, and you came out with a whole different perspective. Would you care to share yours, sir?
Absolutely. In fact, in this company, the business that I've just described was a what I call a breakthrough pivot, right? So um, we were developing a power plant, and to develop a power plant, you have to be on the ground. You've got to be meeting with the government resources. You've got to have local interaction with the communities there. And in March 2020, that was totally shut down. There was no way we were going to, make the progress that we needed to make on that project by getting on planes and going to, shake hands and really engage with people. And in this case, have couscous and have fish from there's just amazing seafood over there. And we had to sit down and really think about, okay, what is our business going to be? This could be the death of our company here. What can we do to sort of shift the dynamic such that we're not tied to this one project and can create a scalable enterprise? And so we really hunkered down. We made time for it to really think broadly and laterally. That's why I like Ed DeBono. Like, how do we look at this as a gift, as opposed to a knife to the heart, if you will, right? And what we realized was, well, what's the one insight that we've learned, that we found here? And one of the things we were able to do was to get this big renewable energy agency to talk to us over the phone, which they almost never do. You got to go into their big, beautiful offices over there. And we started talking about, hey, now that the grid is there, we'd like to sell you our power. And they said, well, if you're going to do that, we're used to buying firm load, like firm amount of energy. And we're saying, but this is a renewable energy plant. It's like, well, I get that, but that's what we buy. And so I said, let us go think about that. And in cracking that code, basically to deliver them a firm set of power, firm price, firm, delivery, much like a coal plant, but from a renewable energy plant, the computing was actually the answer. By having the computing really absorb all of the, choppy or intermittent loads in the power curve there, we can actually give them the first tranche of like the raw power coming out of the plant. And with that structure, they actually felt that, wow, this is actually game changing, because we can get power at a lower cost than we can from some of the thermal plants that we're partnering with. It furthers our renewable energy initiative, and we're getting it at basically a base load experience from a renewable energy plant. We can't even RFP something like this. This is like something very unique. That's when it hit us that, wow, what if we could do this elsewhere? Do we really have to build the power plant? I know we're building the power plant here, but do we really have to? And that's when it shifted our whole perspective, Ron, to what if we took this innovation to other places? And that was the breakthrough. We got some friends within the industry to introduce us to power plant owners, grid operators, schedulers. Took about 6 months talking to them and validating that this problem was real and that it was big. And then we got some power partners that were open to working with us as a pilot partner. And within 6 months, we built our first. We bought an old data center, converted it to our whole new design, connected to hydro, and then from there we've built a massive pipeline. We have over 300 megawatts of projects all over the country and beyond. And it's a completely different business. We went public toward the end of last summer, and so there's just a lot that can be said for coming out of that dark moment where we were like, we're screwed. This COVID thing is going to kill us. To wait a second, I think this could be the best thing that ever happened to us. So, and I think just about every single successful company, I don't care who it is, has gone through that moment. They don't all talk about it, but every single one has gone through it. And that's what most people and entrepreneurs, even in your personal life, those dark moments is when sort of like where the real magic happens. Actually, it's not the end, it's the beginning.
Yeah, the obstacle becomes the opportunity, right?
The opportunity. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So what are you most energized about today, John?
Today, I'm most energized about building our team. We've been attracting some fantastic people from different parts of, different industries, from renewable energy industry. We're building that muscle, if you will. We're bringing fantastic project finance and financial expertise. We're forming new partnerships with some of the largest infrastructure companies in the world. I mean, we changed our website. I want to say in September, October of last year, and the website focused more on a conversation with a power plant owner. Right? It says sort of, if you're experiencing this problem, click this button to schedule a call. and that button is getting clicked, Ron.
That's great.
And not just anybody there. It's being clicked by some of the largest players that are building power all around the world, and have been for many years, and will be doing so for many years. And by forging long-term relationships with them, I think it sets us up to become part of this new grid infrastructure, if you will. And then I think the last thing I'd say is getting into the minds and getting our story to really resonate out there. People are starting to understand what Soluna is trying to do, understands that it could be very much the future. And it's just great, excuse me, to be able to get out there and tell that story to the world.
Great. Well, John, if you would, we're coming to the grand finale, a piece of parting advice you'd like to share with everybody, and if you'd like people to get a hold of you, the best way, please.
Great. I always like to end with a very simple sentence, and that is, keep pushing. No matter what happens, just keep pushing. Never stop. That's how you get to success. And to find us, definitely visit our website, solunacomputing.com. We're on LinkedIn. Soluna is our company page there. We're Soluna Holdings, at Soluna Holdings on Twitter. And we're starting to get a growing community there. And we've got this great newsletter. We encourage people to really join our community. If you're excited about getting renewable energy to become a global superpower, join us. Join the conversation. Give us ideas, things that we can do to enhance our mission. And if you're inclined, join our team. We're hiring as well.
Outstanding. Anything that you wanted to touch on that we missed so far?
No, Ron, that was a great tour. I think that I appreciate the time, and I've learned a lot just from the questions, actually. So I can tell that you've got deep experience in this space for sure.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really wish you tons of luck, John. Thank you for joining the show and sharing your insights, your expertise, and your wisdom. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today, awesome Earthkind people. Do you want to increase your climate impact by a factor of 1,000? Then pick up your phone today and call your United States congressional representative and both your U.S. senators and ask them to support the federal Build Back Better bill. Build Back Better will create the largest climate protection action in American history. Because so few people take the time and make the effort, our elected representatives interpret the opinion of everyone who calls or writes as representing the views of 1,000 other citizens. Congress will vote on the Build Back Better bill that aims to get our country to 80% pollution-free electricity by 2030 and cut climate pollution 100% by 2050. The Build Back Better bill provides tax incentives for solar, wind, energy efficiency, electric cars, charging stations, and more. And it will finally cut the subsidies for fossil fuels. It will also drive major investments into communities that have been disproportionately hit by environmental injustice. When you make the calls, spread the word via social media by posting images of a large red exclamation point using the hashtags Code Red Climate and Code Red Congress. You'll be joining some of your favorite musicians and celebrities, including the Dave Matthews Band, Dead and Companies, Billie Eilish, Melissa Eldridge, Phineas, Maroon 5, Brittany Howard, John Baptiste, Alex Benjamin, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jane Fonda, Mark Ruffalo, Damien and Stephen Marley, Group Love, Huey Lewis and the News, and many more. When the Build Back Better bill passes, the United States can enter the global climate negotiations on November 1st, with America setting out to cut climate pollution 100% by 2050 and be able to encourage other nations to do the same. If not you, then who? The time is now. Act now. Pick up the phone, call your congressional representatives and U.S. senators, and help create a better future for our children and all the 7 billion Earth-kind people on the planet. Thank you.
You too, Ron.